Hello. Welcome to Stories in Time. My name is Ellouise Schoettler. I'm a storyteller. As we're moving up to the holidays, I was thinking about the Christmases that I've known in my lifetime. And there was one that came up first. It was the year that my father returned from the overseas in World War II. He had stayed for the whole war, but he was in India. He was part of repair teams for the pilots that came in to land in India before they flew the hump into China. We had gotten letters, we got, things that were interesting. I have a little doll and some sandals, but I hadn't seen my daddy. 2 years I hadn't seen my father. So when he got home, we were so happy to have him back. But it was changed. It wasn't the same. When Daddy went overseas, Mama moved to a smaller house. She'd been living and renting in a big house. It was just too much. She had 3 children. I'm the oldest. The next is Linda, my sister Linda, and then there's Kathy, who's the youngest one. There were 3 of us then. Her family later grew to 5 children, but not at that point. And it had 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, and a living room. It was fine when it was just us girls, Mama and her 3 girls. Plenty of room, plenty of room. She had fixed it so that Linda and Kathy and I were in the same bedroom. There was a set of bunk beds. I slept on the top, Linda slept on the bottom, and Kathy slept on a single bed near the window. We had a closet for our clothes and some stuff, and Mama had the big back room. And she had her sewing machine back there and other things that she needed to do. Now, she was working. We had a lady that came every day. Emma was her name. And she took care of us while Mama was at work. So we had plenty of room. It didn't matter that we had a small kitchen and we had a table that flopped down off the wall. And then you put it back up with a hook and it was out of the way. That's all we needed. But when Daddy came home, let me tell you something. It got crowded. At that time, you didn't come home and rush back into another house. It was hard to find a house. These men were getting jobs. Families were trying to get themselves back together. I was entering the 5th grade. 5th grade. There was so much going on at that time. The thing that was going on in my head and that I was thinking about, and it didn't make me happy, was that my sisters got into my stuff all the time. They were getting into my stuff. And I didn't like it. And I talked to Mother about it, and I said, they're going through my things. I'm the oldest one. I ought to have some place to put my things. And she agreed. And she went out into her mother's storage house, and she came back with a small roll-top desk. And we had our fingers crossed that it would fit into that closet. And it did. She twisted it a little bit. It was under the shelves. And my daddy, she asked him to put a light bulb on a string that dropped down and that I could turn on the light. And I had a room of my own, a teeny tiny room, that's true, but it was of my own. But it didn't get done when I was in the 5th grade, and I was in the 6th grade, and it was going on to getting into the 7th grade, where I would change schools, and I would be in a junior high school. And I got more and more upset. I wanted a room of my own. And finally, they bought a house. They did. They bought a house. It was a little veterans house. Some of those houses that the contractors were building, and they were selling them to veterans that was supposed to be at a more reasonable price. But it was all new. It was out a little further, but it was all new. And it was strange, actually. It had some exciting things, but it was strange. It was a little square box, actually. And you walked up the front, came in, walked into the living room, and across from that door was a door to a square hallway. That was strange. Walked into a square hallway. And when you turned to the right, there was the door to my parents' bedroom, and then a bathroom, and then a little larger bedroom over here that was going to be for Linda and Kathy, and then this little teeny bedroom that was going to be for me. I was thrilled. I was not complaining about this. This was a room of my own. I was very happy. There was only one thing, though. The room that I was having as my bedroom was actually a little den that was a passway to the dining room and to the kitchen, so that people could come in from the other side where my sister's bedroom was and my parents' bedroom was, and instead of having to walk all the way around, they could just scoot right through my bedroom. When that started, after we moved into that house, I would say to my sisters, "Get out. Don't come in here. This is my room. Don't come in here. I don't want you to come in here." But they didn't stop. They didn't stop. We moved in August, just before school started. We got started in school. They had a school they could walk to. I had to take a bus. We were further from the junior high school. Things change. And they kept on. That was the one thing that was not changing. She kept on. Those two, they kept on. And it made me so mad. And they would come through there and I would say, get out, and slam the door. Daddy came and stopped by my door and he said, "Don't slam the door, Ellouise." Okay, I won't, Daddy, I won't. But then they would come right back and I would slam the door. And either he or Mother would come back and they'd say, "Don't slam that door." That was moving into September. We were all going to school. You know, it was a time where you were feeling like you were growing up a little bit. One Saturday afternoon, it was near the end of September. Everybody was at home. Everybody seemed to be doing their own thing. My sisters were in their bedroom. I was in mine. I don't know where Mom and Daddy were, but they were in the house. They were doing their work. And all of a sudden, they came into my room. They did. They came into my room. And I stood there and I said, "Get out of here. This is my room. I don't want you in here." And I put my hands on their back and I pushed them toward the door. And I got them over there, pushed them out and said, "Go away. Don't come back." And then I slammed the door. I didn't hear anything, but there was something happening in that little hallway. It was just something like something was falling, heavy rain or something else. And I opened the door and I looked out. My sisters had opened their door and looked out. And they started laughing. "You're going to get it. You're going to get it." And I knew that I would, because there was a hole from the top of the ceiling to the floor. There was now an empty hole all the way down in the plaster. The plaster had just fallen out, and there was a nice pile down on the floor. And I heard my daddy coming. He was He had heard all that noise, and he was coming around from the kitchen, through the dining room, through the living room, and into the hallway. He stood there and he looked at that little pile, and he didn't say a word. That was unlike him. He always had something to say, and he turned and went off. And he came back, and he was carrying his tool kit. He had a metal thing that he could open up, and his tools were in it. And he put it down right in front of my door, and he looked at everything, and he lifted out his long screwdriver that had a big yellow handle at the end. And standing there, he reached up high, and he unscrewed the top hinges. And then he worked down it. There were 3 sets of hinges, and he worked down. And when he was taking down the bottom one, he held up the top, and he held out the bottom, and it came loose, and he was standing there. It was a small hallway, so he just turned around, and he had the door standing up beside him. And he reached up, and he pulled down a cord. And from the ceiling, steps dropped down. Folding steps dropped down right beside him. And he turned, and he pushed that door up those steps and into the attic. He followed it and put it someplace so that it wouldn't fall over. And then he came back down with nothing. And I was standing there. I didn't know what was going to be said or what was going to come, but I was sure that I hadn't heard the last of it. He put the steps back up into the ceiling, turned, and he looked at me. I was standing in my bedroom, and he looked at me and he said, Don't talk to me about it, but you won't be doing that again." There was nothing to say. I wouldn't be doing that again. I was sleeping in a room that had no door. Back to my situation in that apartment. I didn't have a door. I didn't have any privacy. And I was now 12, going toward 13. Why was he doing this? Well, when Christmas came, we went out into the living room where the tree was, and there was a large, large door next to the tree. It was wrapped, and it had a big bow on it, and there was a note, and it said, "Merry Christmas, Ellouise. Love, Santa." And the next day, he put my door back up, and I can promise you, I did not slam that door anymore. Well, some years later, I was at home with family, my whole family, and we were telling about things that had happened and stories about. And so my brother said, "Well, let's tell some stories about Christmas." And I said, "Well, I have a Christmas story." He said, "Well, I know that Christmas story. I'll tell it for you." "You can't because you weren't born. You don't know that story." And he said, "Well, I've got you on that. I know it as good as you do because Daddy always told it, Ellouise. It was the one favorite story that he had on you, and he loved to tell it." That's why stories in the family are really important. Thank you for listening.